I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I need a motion to approve the minutes of the October 21st meeting.
Madam Chair, I have a couple of corrections to suggest.
Let me call it and then we can discuss.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
discussion. Go ahead, Fillmore.
Okay, regarding the library, reference in a couple of places for the $117,000 loan from the government, and it refers to personal protective equipment, and that was in the second paragraph on page 2, and also on the fourth paragraph down on page 3 refers to a PPP loan. That was not a PPE loan, that was a PPP, and I hate to, PPE was for personal protective equipment,
Yeah.
masks and that sort of thing, but the PPP loan that they got was, for keeping the people on payroll, and I'm not exactly sure what PPP means, but
Okay. Good.
That's the second paragraph of the second page and the fourth paragraph on the third page. And then also in the first paragraph of the third page, again, talking about the library, about the percentage of the budget that the town funds, and then versus how much they're supposed to be raising on their own. It says, it refers to the town providing 80% of the total budget, but I'm pretty sure it's that the town was 85% was the discussion. And that's what I've always been talking about. So that 80 needs to be 85. So those are my corrections.
Thank you. Anyone else? So as amended, I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Finance member comments. I'm gonna just bring up something now and then we can talk about it later. Based on the budget coming up, I wanted the board to consider giving more guidelines to the town, including the Board of Ed, in terms of more of a target that we believe is appropriate during these times. It would be something we'd have to work on. We'd have to look at, the forecasting we've done for the next 5 years and kind of look at it and give, as I go to these meetings and people reach out, they are asking for a little more guidance. And I think that's a fair question. And I think it is something that we can provide for the town and for the Board of Ed. So again, we can talk about it now, we can talk about it later, but it is something I'd like the board to consider. I know we've talked about it before and we haven't done it yet, but I think it's something worth considering right now. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you, Gene. To figure out the timing and put the work into, coming up with what the appropriate numbers would be. But I do think just setting an expectation for guidance would be very helpful.
Okay. Anyone else?
I agree with that. Yes, we should. It would be helpful to all concerned, I think, if we send out some sort of a guideline rather than getting down to the last minute and then having a scruffle fight.
Right, and keeping in mind that, they can present any budget they want, but I think an expectation of what we will approve, what we feel is appropriate you know,
What
I
the
mean,
town can afford, right, Gene?
correct, based on what the town can afford, based on taxes. You know, I think that's fair. And then if, you know, if they don't take the guidelines, it's something we would give back to them until they can get to where we feel it's what the town can afford. So those are just my thoughts. Justin, how do you feel?
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes sense. But as you said, obviously doesn't change anything. We're looking at the entire budget and all the requests as we would, but just setting some kind of guidance certainly does make sense to me.
Good. John?
Yeah, my thoughts would be, you started by saying with projections and where we are and I think we need those, Gene, to do, you know, to offer guidelines. So where we are now in November, where, you know, after meeting with Stacy and what you do is see where we are and where we think we're going to be. So you could offer guidelines.
All right, so then we'll set up a time. Stacy, if you could help us go through the budget forecasting. I think that will be a way for us to kind of look at where we are and what our goal is in terms of the budget and taxes. All right. I don't want people to get too far into the budget process and do all this work and then we come up with this number. So I'd like to do it sooner rather than later. We have a meeting in December. Maybe we can set up another meeting, you know, just to kind of more of like a workshop to discuss and look at the budget forecasting. So we can look at that also. Okay.
Just one thought, Jean, the Board of Ed is a little bit ahead of the town side. So if we could maybe have an extra meeting so that we can give guidance over there.
Okay, perfect. We could do that. Yep. Okay, Lauren, any citizens?
No one has their hand raised.
Thank you. Next, discuss and take action to approve a donation in the amount of $10,000 from Madison Neighbor to Neighbor for the discretionary fund of $5,000 for rental assistance to a specific resident and $5,000 into the fund for use of the department to help families in need. I need a
So
motion.
moved.
Second.
So moved.
Thank you. So obviously, oh, Catherine, you're here. Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Again, thank you to Neighbor and Neighbor. They've
Absolutely.
just been phenomenal. But if you want to talk a little bit about the donation?
Sure, so this is a little bit different than the last donation that we did, and that went directly to the COVID fund. This is our typical discretionary fund that we have through Neighbor and Neighbor every year. That money helps to go to citizens that are having trouble making ends meet and stuff like that. Over the last year or so, that fund has changed a little bit too, in that we worked with Neighbor and Neighbor to develop a domestic violence support fund. So we actually have two families right now, or two families that we're helping to support financially for housing. That program allows us to pay up to $600 or half of their rent, whichever comes first, a month to help them get on their feet for no more than a year. So we have two families currently utilizing that program. And then this particular donation also allows us to have money to help another resident who is having a really tough time right now. We kind of put the case out there, Neighbor to Neighbor, and they very generously agreed to help pay for 3 months rent for her as well.
That's wonderful.
We do a lot with the money that we get in terms of helping to keep people in their homes and going. So we honestly couldn't do it without them.
That's great. Thank you. Please give them our thanks.
Absolutely.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Yeah.
abstention? Motion carries. Thank you,
Excuse me,
Catherine.
Madam Chair, and also,
Yes.
Catherine, tell the Neighbor to Neighbor that the whole board supports what they've done for this town. What they've always been doing, what they continue to do. They represent the best in all of us. Thank you.
They do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and next we have, I need a motion to discuss and take action to approve it, accepting of a steep grant award in the amount of $128,205 pending Board of Selectmen approval. The grant requires a matching funds $11,795.
So moved.
Second? Discussion.
Second.
Stace, do you want to talk about this?
Sure. So this is for a project for the Bauer Park. It's a elevated walkway, a nature trail from the park over to the school. It's been in CIP. It was approved for this current fiscal year for 140,000. And this grant came in after the fact. So this is a great surprise, and it's going to offset about 90% of the cost that we were expecting to
Is the-
totally absorb.
Is the 11,000 that we have to matching, we already have that.
Correct. We have 140. So now all we have to do is spend the 11,000 and we'll get the 128
That's
Back.
great.
for the grant. Yeah. Yep.
Awesome. Everyone in favor?
Call for a vote, yes, aye.
Sounds good.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Next, discuss and take action to approve accepting the year enhancing the, what's the IELC? All right. Stace?
Trent is talking. Trent is here to talk about that. It's year one
Okay.
of the ELC
Right.
enhancement detecting grant.
Okay, so I don't know what that is. So Trent, I'm going to hand it over to you. Are you
Trent,
muted?
you're on mute, bud.
Sorry about. Can you hear me now? So essentially what this is Trent, Director of Health. Essentially what this is a grant from DPH to get approved, which would essentially increase the capacities for reporting and surveillance, probably primarily for hiring a temporary part-time nurse to assist with contact tracing. And also with this grant, it's used, or essentially it's budgeted for also the vaccination of our first responders right now. And it's a 3-year grant. There's no matching. And that's why essentially the position that we're looking for the registered nurse would be temporary, because, you know, I don't know if this would be continuing beyond the years of the award.
That's great. Are other towns doing that? How'd you come
Yes,
across?
this was I believe it was initially, maybe if you guys saw it, it was like $20 million that Governor Vermont had announced that local health departments were eligible for. And this is some, you know, just a grant that I applied for, and we get an allocation based on our per capita.
That's
so,
great.
yeah.
Well, we appreciate you looking out for grants and stuff, because during this time, those are really important.
Hey,
Yeah.
hey, Trent, just a quick question. Does the grant that we received cover all the expenses associated with that new part-time head?
Yes, it does. It's the grant is the position is budgeted for in the grant.
That's great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Discuss and take action to approve the Historic Document Preservation Program grant in the amount of $5,500. Need someone to move it?
So move.
Second?
Second.
Second.
Discussion.
Tell us again, I think I know what this is, but just a couple of minutes of what it is. Lauren?
So this is actually something for the town clerk, and unfortunately, she was not able to attend tonight, but I let her know that I would answer any questions you guys had for her. This is a grant that we apply for every year that helps us to digitize historic documents that are located in the town clerk's vault.
It comes in every year, right, Lauren? It's a-
Yep.
All right,
Good.
good. Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation request from the Emergency Management Department in the amount of $6,000 to fund a fire inspector for 8.
Sorry. Green, you
Oh, I
skipped,
missed one.
in the-
I apologize. So I need a motion to discuss, take action to approve a line item transfer request from Beach and Rec in the amount of $3,300 to fund an increase in cable and internet costs.
Make the motion. So moved.
Second,
But
discussion. Stace?
what,
What
yeah,
happened?
what is the increase
happened?
cost
Yeah.
from? Yeah.
So, yeah, so the increase for the $3,000 plus was basically the rates went up since the budget was prepared, as well as we have that new maintenance garage and we had to run lines over there. So this will cover the entire facility over there.
And where's the line transfer coming from?
I don't have that in front of me, but it should be in your,
It's, the sheet says coming from, if I'm reading it right, coming from maintenance supplies and going to the cable internet.
Okay,
Is
that makes sense, from supplies, yep.
okay.
And this will be budgeted moving forward?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor?
Is it something that Wi-Fi can't handle, or is it just Cat 5 they're running? Is it, just expanding the,
I think it's expanding the bandwidth and putting new wires or connections to the new building that we put up there. I don't know all the details or, the mechanics behind it, but looking at the current bills, we needed to project it through the end of the year, and this will cover us for the rest of the year.
all right, seems like all right, okay.
Sorry, Ken, go ahead.
What's that?
Go ahead.
No, it just seems like a lot for running cable, that's all. But that's fine. I don't know. I don't know how much it costs, so it just seems like a lot. Because all you're running is running one Cat 5 wire, right? I don't know. Anyway.
And if you want more details, I can certainly get them. This is based on the monthly bill, and we just projected it for the remainder of the year. But I can get you more info.
Yeah, Stacy, I have no idea, but I'm wondering, the maintenance garage that has always been there probably doesn't have like cable TV or access at all, and I would guess, right?
This is a new garage, Justin. They used to be at the Surf Club building, and we put up the new not a garage, but the maintenance facility. Yeah, so
Right.
that's new, and we had to connect it. So that's
what I
separate.
mean. Maybe the old building maybe didn't have anything, and the new building has something. So that's why it's like new service essentially.
Correct.
Kenny, which might explain why it's that much,
Yeah, but it's not cable TV, right? It's internet, I guess, right? Or is it?
Yeah,
that
I
I
would
don't
say
know.
it's mostly for the internet connection.
Yeah.
And to connect, I mean, we're gonna have with our new Munis, the employee self-service portal. Our employees will have to go on an actual computer that will need internet access at that building. So we needed to connect to computer. I don't know the lingo, Ken.
No, it might just me, thinking about what, like the shed that used to be at the old surf club. It just doesn't seem like a building that would have that type of technically advanced, setup, but that's fine. I'll move forward.
Okay. All right, all in favor? Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Now discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation request from the Emergency Management Department in the amount of $6,000 to fund a fire inspector for 8 hours a week from January 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2021. Moved,
So move.
seconded? Seconded?
Yep.
Discussion.
Didn't we have this
Sam
discussion
is
during the
on
last
this.
budget meeting?
Say again?
Didn't we have this discussion during our budget process? And we're gonna start this in January, or am I mistaken?
We did start to discuss it. It wasn't a motion at the time.
No, yeah, no, I know.
Yeah,
But
no,
that
we
was the
did.
discussion we had. Okay,
Correct.
all right.
Correct.
I didn't want to know if it was something different, that's all.
No, same thing, same thing.
Okay.
Discussion. Anybody have anything? Sam's on the call. If anybody has any questions.
I'm looking at the pictures. It looks like, John, you and Sam are standing side by side out there in San Francisco.
Exactly. Fillmore, it's good to see you up in, back in the game there, bud. Nice to see you.
Justin, was this the deal that you sent the questions out on?
No, mine was about the communication upgrade.
Okay, all right.
This was just for the extra hours we talked about last meeting, as John pointed out. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention, motion carries. Next, discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation request from the Emergency Management Department in the amount of $9,500 for satellite internet for the EOC. I need it moved.
I'll move.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second, Dunn and Fillmore. Go ahead.
Doesn't matter.
Discussion. Anyone?
Yeah, I'll start off with questions. Sam, I know that in past storms we've had, as I've said before, we were one big tree limb for being totally out of whack. And then Jack Plum, he's not here, is he? Chief Jack, several years ago was proposing and came up with a plan to connect with the state grid going through Clinton. And we put up some little antennas aiming toward the Clinton, which would then hook up with the state. So, and that would allow the hookup with Wi-Fi using the state network, so we were not dependent on the hard wires running through town. But I'm guessing that maybe that didn't work, and that we're now having to use a satellite Wi-Fi instead of going through the state network.
So the PSDN, which is the Public Safety Data Network, is
Say again?
so the PSDN network that I believe Chief Drum was talking about is for is to connect all the dispatch centers, fire stations, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to get. So right now we're using that to connect all our radios. The microwave goes into the PSDN network, which goes back to dispatch for all our radio uses. And I think the microwaves that he's talking about are on the radio towers, which operate our radio system.
Yeah.
So they don't really let you do internet off of that. It's very tough to get extra features on that. We are pursuing other options to have, I guess through the school system, we're trying to get some other internet backup. But this is, anything with wire obviously is vulnerable in a storm. And even the satellite has its own vulnerabilities. But I know in Sandy, we were out, I think the internet was down in Town Hall for like 2 or 3 days until Art could switch it. He had to switch everything over manually to the backup service at AT&T. And I apologize to Justin. Just when I got back in here, I saw your email. Today was kind of a hectic day.
No worries.
So what happens with Comcast is they have boosters around their system, and they're all on battery backup. And as those batteries die, when the power goes off, then you lose your internet service, cable TV internet service, and that's why it's sporadic throughout the town. So that's what happened this last storm. And I know in Sandy, Comcast was out. They've definitely improved their infrastructure. But like I said, in Sandy, we were out of internet service for like 2 days until Art switched over. He had a manual switch over to the AT&T network, which wasn't as robust. And so we're trying to, just make a redundancy so that we're not down to internet service, because now with COVID and everything else, Eversource did not send people out, so we have to connect with them over internet and email. So to your question about how often we opened it up, so in the beginning of the pandemic, we had the EOC open for about a month, and we were running all our meetings out of there. The radios were set up for probably about 4 months. And I just put them away at about a month and a half ago at the request of the Board of Ed, because they wanted to use the space a little bit more. And in past years, it's been probably 4 or 5 times a year. And I know it's a lot of money. I even think it's a lot of money to have for, those few times a year, but when you need it, you need it. You can't be without the internet service during an emergency. Guilford's been running this system, and they just upgraded to the satellite. for a number of years, and they've been have had good success with it. I talked with the IT person over there today. He's been testing it on cloudy days and everything, and through bad weather, and the upload and download speeds are very good even in the rainy weather. Because as you're familiar with DirecTV, if you get a rainstorm or something, your satellite could go out. So he's been trying it over there, and they even have they have redundancy with all the cell phone companies and everything else. They have probably 4 times the redundancy that we have. But that's about, and I hopefully answer all your questions.
So Sam, our current system is it basically cable, like hardwired, as opposed to even like cellular? Is that our current
Yes.
system that we have now?
Our current system is Comcast with a backup to AT&T, but the backup has to be physically, Art has to physically come in and hook up the backup.
Right,
So
but both of those are wired systems, right? Like cable
Correct.
wire.
Yep.
So they're susceptible, just like electrical wires, I assume.
Yep. When the poles go down, the wires can come down and.
Okay. I didn't know if it was cellular. Yeah, I didn't know if it was cellular or hardwired. And then satellite is obviously satellite, but as you say, satellite could have its own issues in bad weather as well. But whatever, everything does, I guess. But is the satellite, does the satellite, do they still have land-based like satellite dishes that they feed off of that are part of that backup system?
I'm not exactly sure. I know that this one goes up to, I don't know which one it goes up to in the space, but
meaning it's not coming directly to your phone. It's, there's got to be, I don't know.
It's going to come to the building. It's going to go into the internet service of the building.
Okay.
Sam, going back to some of our earlier situations, my recollection is that Comcast is the first system to go down and the last system to come up. And so I'm a little surprised. Back in the day, we were on, I guess, what is now Frontier, the old-fashioned telephone lines, which stayed up during Irene. So I'm a little surprised that we have gone over to Comcast.
I can't speak for Art, but I think it's the capacity. I don't think AT&T or Frontier, or as AT&T at the time, could deliver the capacity.
Oh, okay. All right. And then even when we were relying on Frontier to maintain the communications between the dispatch and the 2 or 3 towers around town, we were, as I said earlier, only 1 tree limb away from being cut out. But fortunately, those what are now the Frontier cables are down at the bottom of the pole and are the most robust of the things, of the wires on the poles. So I'm not disputing what you're talking about, and I will be voting in favor of it, but I would maybe at some future meeting when we have nothing else going on, maybe if we could get some combination of you and Art and Jack or Joe Race or somebody to come fill us in on exactly what the different levels are of our capacity to communicate. I just throw that out if you could.
Yeah, and I'm gonna talk with Ed about being able to jump onto the public safety data network for internet,
Okay.
and see what that process is.
All right.
Right now it's being mainly for communication, between dispatch centers.
All right.
I would just add one real quick thing. I think just to mention that a lot of these systems now that they're using in emergency management are web-based. So it's quite different than what we might have been using 10 years ago. So internet is just becoming a more critical component of our emergency response now. So to not have internet is a really big deal now. So that's another reason we thought this was important to have a backup system for internet service.
And even Eversource has been threatening to give us access to their system via the internet, but they've been doing that for about 3 years and we're still waiting.
Good.
I guess, Gene, I just have one final
Yep.
a comment, question, whatever you want to call it. I know, I know in a year like this, it's always tough to, we never like special appropriations. These certainly seem like legitimate needs, but is there a reason why they weren't? I know the storm was recent, but, could they have been part of the budget process? And not to play them off against each other, but there's another emergency management request next in line, next on the agenda. Sam, maybe a question for you. Is it possible to have one of these, defer until the next budget season, just simply for the desire not to have, special appropriations, especially in a tough budget year that we've had?
I almost think these go hand in hand.
Yeah, so the next one is kind of
They
a,
go hand in hand.
it's an
Sorry.
internet-based emergency management system. And it, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you how the winter's going to be, but if we end up losing, internet at the town hall, then our system goes down and it's useless.
That's my
So
point.
doing one without the other really doesn't benefit.
And
In
Sam,
the
Yeah.
emergency operations.
what
And I
did-
didn't mean ultimately, I just meant timing wise, just maybe holding off on one for like the next budget cycle. That's all, but.
Yeah, and
I
we're
think it's
still
important.
looking for grant money. Here and there, we're applying all over the place to try to get grant money so that the town doesn't have to pay for these things. But
Hey, Sammy,
that's very tough.
it's Ken. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you. What did the town do the last time that it lost internet? How did they manage?
So back in Sandy, Art had to physically come in and switch over to the AT&T network.
Okay.
Um,
And that
This
was
the last time here, we just waited for Comcast to come back up.
And
you know,
do you know how long that took for them to get you back online?
It was about 8 hours.
8 hours. Okay. All right. Thank you, Sam.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries.
So Jean,
Yes.
I'm sorry, one other thing that we need to vote on this item and the one
Sure.
before. To take
Okay.
a special appropriation can either come from fund balance or a contingency.
How
We
much
have
is in contingency?
71,000, a little over 71,000, so I'd recommend that both of them come out of contingency at this point.
I
Okay,
agree.
anybody object?
I agree.
No objections.
So we'll amend it to say that it's coming out of contingency. Both of them will go back to the other vote, which you probably can't do, but we will. And so again, we'll take the vote again. Everybody in favor?
Yeah.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Stacy, do you want me to vote on coming out of contingency for the other one?
Yeah, for when we do the next one.
You just
Yeah.
add it to the motion.
I will. Thanks, John.
Sorry,
Discuss
Gene.
and take action to approve a special appropriation request as follows for expenses incurred due to tropical storm
Oh,
Isa.
you
you skipped number
Oh,
12.
all right, I
Missed the
apologize.
DOC.
Discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation request from Emergency Management Department, this amount of $5,000 for emergency management software and storm tracking.
Of contingency.
I'll move
So
accept
moved.
that from contingency.
Second, okay, discussion.
I was online and watched the presentation that Sam made last week about this particular software. It looked to be a good thing for the town to have. I will give an overview, Sam. You can dig into the details if you want, but it's a way of having readily available online any particular trees down, roads blocked, et cetera, so that when people need to know what's going on, they don't have to call dispatch to find out what's happening. Or if you're in an ambulance driving around in order to get to such and such an address, you don't suddenly find yourself in a blocked street. You can look on your little laptop there in the cab and see that this is the way to get to where you're going. So I don't want to speak for Sam, but it's been used in Guilford for a little while, and they're very happy with it. I think $5,000 is coming from contingency. That's why we have the contingency fund for. It's for these small things that come up during the year. So I think it's probably a good thing.
To back up on Fillmore, so the best thing is this operates by itself, right? Nobody has to run it. So once the information is input into the program, it automatically puts something up on the map. It also notifies the proper department. So if it's a tree down with no wires, it'll notify the Public Works Department, they can go clean that up. Tree with wires, obviously, Eversource has to get the list, and it automatically populates the list for block roads and stuff for Eversource with all the priorities. There is a public interface with it, so the public can look at the storm damage on a map. And we could even use it if it's a motor vehicle accident that's got Route 79 closed for a certain length of time. So there is other things to use it. And Trent just brought up to me today or yesterday at our EOC meeting, that Guilford has launched a questionnaire or reporting feature for contact tracing for the Guilford in their VOC program. And that's something we could add on, for actually no cost. We can make any types of different forms of questionnaires in there at no cost. Everything's based on the users. So we're licensed. This license would give us about 16 users. So the way we got around it is we're going to make user groups for each department. Not everybody's going to have an individual individual user. And it does work fine with that. Chief Show from Guilford, who's very familiar with the product, assured me there wouldn't be any problems. So originally, because we started at the original price was $28,000, a little over $28,000 to run the software, and I kind of fell off the chair, and they said to the guy, "You kidding me?" So I got him down to 5, so we can get this thing up and running and help us.
That's some good negotiating, Sam.
Listen, I was on that presentation.
You want to do our contracts?
If I might just add, this is Trent. So the VOG system can also be worked for what Sam was trying to explain. It will be for COVID-19 self-reporting. We're seeing a major delay in the secure portal from DPH of positive COVID test results of our residents. And with that, with a delay in reporting, it's hard to provide adequate surveillance, right, to contact trace. And what the system will allow for our residents to, if they get a test result via MyChart or any text message from whatever lab they went to, they'll be able to self-report that online. Also online, they'll be able to see the latest travel guidance, also the latest sector rules for their own private or social gatherings, which shouldn't be allowed right now or even entertained. And then also, other things in terms of testing sites. So, I think it'll be really fundamental and a great thing.
Good. Thank you. All in favor? All in favor?
Can I just make one comment first?
Yeah.
Or no?
No, you can.
Sam, no, I saw the presentation as well, and it looked pretty impressive. Since we're the Board of Finance, my analogy was it's like, it's balancing your checkbook by hand and, manually, or using one of these softwares. It's the same thing, but it makes it a lot easier. That's kind of how I described it to my wife, who I don't vote on anything without consulting her first, of course. But I guess my concern, Sam, you did say 16 people, which sounds like enough, but hearing the presentation, because the cost is per user, that if it works so well, are we going to find ourselves, wanting to grow it and use more, have more features and therefore more users? So that I'm in favor of it, but that's my only concern, that, maybe we like it too much and everyone else wants to use it. So then the price starts, jumping up.
Well, so is there a way to cap the users so that you don't have that issue?
I think there's more than just users, though, Ken. There's so many more applications to this module. This has been around for over 10 years. And it's the way for a lot of institutions, utilities, police, fire, EMS, to communicate with each other. It's going to make a big difference. And I know we mentioned, I forgot Justin's example. It used to, I'm sure Stacy used to cross out her checks with a ruler and a pencil, but she much rather, I don't want to say Munis, but there's other software you'd rather use. It makes your life better, more efficient. And in this
Don't mention
instance, it'll make it a lot safer. And it's not just about what Trent said about COVID. This is going to be for so much more in the future. I think, Justin, you'll come back later on and say, we need more of these modules to do more of these things to bring us further into the 21st century.
No, I know, and that'll drive the price up. That's all. Just kind of, forewarned, I guess.
It may drive
Yes.
the price up, but also drive safety and service and everything else.
Well, are there
Yeah.
any efficiencies this drives, cost savings? Is there a way to justify the ad by, seeing some of those efficiencies in either, people or process?
So right now, Guilford has expanded. They started with this about 6-7 years ago. And Guilford's expanded it to where they're running all their daily operations on this program. Now they're paying a lot more money, somewhere around $40,000-$50,000 a year for it. But the police department uses it. Town hall people use it. Now they just added on this thing for the health department. Their public works department's in on it. So it all depends on how much we want to expand it. I mean, I really only need it for the emergency management side of it. If the town sees a need or benefit to expanding it, then at that time we'll discuss it and see how much the charge is.
Yeah, no,
I just want to say that we are going through right now a review of all software programs that the town currently purchases and pays annual fees for, because the way the town has been run for a long time has been on a silo basis. And a lot of these decisions have been made on a department by department basis. So one of the things I'm initiating is more of a technology overview and review of all applications to make sure that at least, is it more cost effective to have one umbrella software that can cover multiple agencies or multiple departments versus to have these individual software packages. This is one where I think we all felt very comfortable in because it offers a unique service and it's proven in one of our neighboring communities. And so we wanted to move forward. So any kind of decision to roll this out or add users or add additional functionality, I think that's going to be reviewed as part of our technology review that we do. The other thing I just want to point out.
That to be done, Peggy.
Well, we just started. I just met with Art and I literally, there was no inventory that anybody had ever seen about all the different software systems and what it actually cost. I mean, he has these buried in spreadsheets in his department, but just to really step back and look at it from a bird's eye view. I will say the other thing that I want to highlight here, the COVID piece of this is something that we can submit to get reimbursement for as an incremental cost due to COVID. And I'll update you later on what I'm finding out about some of the FEMA reimbursement as well as the state's offering. So there might be a chance to recapture the expense that we're incurring currently on this, not from the grant, Trent, that you're talking about, which is more specific to nursing services, but generally in terms of our reimbursement process that we go through for COVID related expenses. So hopefully that'll give you a little bit of comfort that this will be watched and carefully evaluated to see if it's something that we would want to replace a software maybe that we're using right now, not, add on to.
So is this a one-time cost or is this an ongoing?
It's an annual.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my thought then, Peggy, is by next year, when we come to talk about this, you'll have a better understanding of the software for the next budget cycle?
Absolutely. I think we need to step back and, I saw a list of over 30 different software programs. So, and I'm sure a number of those programs could provide multiple services, so.
So I guess my point is this, moving forward, as we do with all the studies, it's better for us to have all that information before we start buying things and spending money. If we're going to do a study, then we should have the study done before
Well, it's not really a study. It's how the department should be managing all software, but that's not how the town is doing it.
No. Yeah. So my point is, though, we should know that when we get requests like this, so
Mhm.
that we have a better, if that's something we're going to look into, and this is something that maybe we need more users for, maybe we need more information. And again, Sam, I'm not derailing this. I think we're all in agreement that we're going to do this
But
and it's
Jean-
worth it.
Jean,
But I just want to make sure moving forward that, again, I don't like to buy certain things and then build up to it and then change it. It's
Mhm.
an oversimplification for it is, I don't want to put Windows in Academy and then close Academy that school year. So I just want to make sure we know what we're investing in. Should we be investing more into it? I don't know the answer to that, but I don't want to piecemeal these things. Although I think this is, as I did talk to someone in Guilford, and this is something that they highly recommend. So I don't argue it, but I think, Justin, going to your point, I think this is something that's going to end up being much more widely used, and probably will end up costing us more. And hopefully the savings will come from the
Getting
software.
off
we
of
do.
something else, right? Exactly.
Right.
So, and that's why I think we have to take that holistic approach and make sure we're not double counting certain kind of functionalities in our software.
And to my knowledge, we don't have any other software in the town that would do this.
Right.
Not
Right.
that.
but just to go back to Justin's point a couple minutes ago, this is a special appropriation. If we need the software, is it just a matter of timing to put it into your regular budget and then have it be part of a timed implementation, but part of the normal budget process?
So here's the thing, we've been hit with a lot of storms this year. ICASIS, and then we had the little tornado. We were kind of on the fringe of that tornado that went through Branford. Just the other night, we had a little squall come through that knocked down some trees and power lines, and I wasn't even notified that Signal Hill Road was blocked since 10:30 p.m. I had to find out on my own, and I'm not sure, if it was called a dispatch, but I'd imagine it was. The fire department was never dispatched to it. I don't know if the police department went, but so if the dispatcher gets a notification of that, or a police officer goes, they can put it into there, and then I can get automatically notified that this is going on. And we might have been able to speed up the process of getting the power restored to those people a little bit quicker than 14 hours or 15 hours.
No, I
And I
understand.
hate to see us delay it, Ken, for the 5,000, we're gonna do it
John, I hear what you
anyways.
said. What'd you say, John?
I said, I hate to see us delay it for the 5,000 if we're gonna be doing it shortly anyways, I mean,
Oh.
that's my point.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yep. Thanks, John.
Good.
And thanks, Sam.
Any other questions or comments? And this is going to come out of the, what did we say? The
Contingency.
Contingency, please.
Okay, all in favor?
I,
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation request as follows for expenses incurred during tropical storm go ahead, ICES, right? Was that right?
Yes, I've had to say it enough in my announcement.
Yes.
Yes.
Close enough.
There you go. Thank you, Peggy. I'm not going to read all of them. We have it in our agendas. I need it moved.
so moved.
Second. Discussion.
So Jean, if I
Yeah.
could just say so there's 7 bullets here. The first 6 bullets
Yeah.
are for expenses that already took place. And basically all we're doing is we're asking to fund those expenses while we're waiting for the federal government to declare the state of emergency. The 35,000, the last bullet, John is here to talk about that. So I'm not sure if we can do the first few other than that 35,000 as a separate
We have
action.
to do them as a separate action, all of them?
I'll let Lauren chime in on
Fine.
that. I mean, I would like to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 together if we can, or
Sure,
Yeah,
just amend the
Terry can
motion to all
just-
6.
to do the 6 and leave the 7th one out.
Yeah,
Okay.
Terry can just make sure that the minutes reflect that you did 2 separate motions.
Okay, all right, everyone okay with that? Okay, so the first 6 you said, Stace?
Yes, and if we can also do it out of contingency, I think we could absorb that as well.
But
Okay,
are you saying, Stacy, they're all, these are gonna be reimbursed ultimately? Is that what-
We're
what you
hoping,
said?
Will, Justin,
We're
and if
hoping.
they are reimbursed, it'll go in the revenue line item and go back into fund balance. But for now, I just want to make the line items whole.
Right, okay.
any questions on any of them? No? All right, so motion to approve the first 6 that'll come out of contingency.
We make
So
that-
So
moved.
moved.
so moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Motion to approve the Public Works Department in an amount of $35,000 to fund brush removal at the bulky waste site due to debris removed during storm cleanup. The action will satisfy all requirements for a town meeting under State of Connecticut Executive Order 71. I need it moved.
Let me throw out, you mentioned taking it out of contingency. It's my view that these should not come out of contingency, that they should come out of fund balance, because when they get reimbursed, that'll go back into fund balance. And that fund balance is there to look after the, $5,000 or $8,000 thingies that come up during the year. And-
Talking about the first 6?
Yeah,
All right, well, we voted.
okay.
We'd have to undo it.
Fillmore, that was my thought too, but it's been a while and we have not heard if this was declared a federal emergency yet. So
Okay.
I just have a little concern that we may not get any FEMA reimbursement at this point. That's the only reason why I was leaning towards contingency.
All right. I'll yield to your discretion.
You okay?
Just so you know, the president currently has 11 requests for emergency declarations throughout the country that has not been acted upon yet. But we are still hopeful that this will get approved.
Thank you. Okay, so we're on
Very
the
well, very
last one
well.
from Public Works. We moved it, seconded it. Discussion. Any questions? No? Stace, where will this come out of?
This will have to come out of fund balance.
Okay. Good, Fillmore? Any questions? Thoughts, concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Thank you. Discuss and take action to approve the 2021-22 budget workshop schedule. Did anyone have a chance to look at it?
Yeah.
Everybody good?
Not really.
You all lied.
We're not doing anything else during this winter, so.
Yeah.
For yourself. Better.
Motion to approve.
Moved.
Stay with it. So
Second.
moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstention. Nays, motion carries. Discuss and take action to approve the 2021 Board of Finance meeting schedule. Again, you all lied. No one looked at it. All in favor?
Sure.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? I want one person asking to move a meeting. You all
Well-
voted. You got to move it now, don't you? You're going to change something
Well,
now.
I was just going to say, my only thing, and I'd emailed you guys this when I had sent out the draft of everything, is that on Wednesday, May 19th, you meet at 8:30 a.m. to set the mill rate, and then you meet at 7 p.m. for your regular meeting. So do you want 2 meetings on the same day, or do you want to combine them and have like a 9 a.m. regular, or, have an 8:30 a.m. regular meeting that includes setting the mill rate?
Everybody okay with that? I'd rather do that.
Yeah.
All
I'd
right.
go with one meeting.
Then I will update the BOF meeting schedule to reflect that one meeting on the 19th.
Terrific.
Great.
All right, the rest of it, all in favor? Oh, wait, go ahead, Fillmore.
And the reason we're doing it in the morning is because they need to get that out.
Yeah, we need to get it to the tax collector so that they can start the ball rolling on bills.
Buy a coffee, Fillmore. Don't worry.
All in favor?
Uh,
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. review the 2021-22 CIP committee process and budget process. Anyone have any
So-
questions? Go ahead.
I could just speak up that tomorrow night, we do have our first public hearing at 7 o'clock via Zoom. And all we're doing is presenting what was submitted by the first select woman with support of the Board of Selectmen, the actual document that you've all received. We'll present that, present the schedule, and try to encourage people to be engaged throughout the process. Our first meeting, I believe, is December 3rd to start actually vetting out all the projects.
Good. Any other questions about the process? We're going to try to schedule another meeting. We'll talk about looking at the guidance that we'll give the town and the Board of Ed. Any other thoughts, comments? Okay, next, review financials, Stace.
Yeah, unless anybody has any questions, I don't have much to talk about as far as a regular operating general fund budget. A couple things I do want to highlight is the, well, first, does anybody have any questions on the reports that were included in your packet?
No.
Okay. So one thing I just wanted to mention is the health insurance reserve fund. It's getting pretty healthy. We've talked about it a few months ago. We're up way above our 25% goal, about our 25% over and above our expected claims goal. So we should talk about that during the budget process, and maybe next month I'll make sure I have a report for you all, but that fund balance is definitely healthier. Our expected claims were a lot lower than our actual claims. So I do want to go over that with you, but I wanted to give you a heads up that it's building up pretty healthy, and we should talk about what we want to do, if anything, with that fund. The other thing, Peggy did say she's going to talk about FEMA reimbursement, so I'm not going to steal her thunder. So I'll let her talk about that. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention was, after our last meeting with the library, we talked about the 150,000. We did hear back from the library, and they opted to reduce the remaining of their payments for that amount, so that the 150 would be left over for the contribution into their budget. They also refinanced their mortgage on the little house in the back, so they had a savings of about $6,000. So they offered that up as well. So I think it was a total of about 156,000 that we divvied up over the remaining payments, and we'll see that as a surplus in their operating line item for the end of the year.
Thank you.
Um,
Any other questions on financials? Go ahead, Fillmore.
Yeah, Stacey, I noticed this might be bad news in a way. The real estate conveyance is way up. We budgeted 400 grand and we're already at 315. This tells me that a lot of people are having to sell out and move out of town.
Or move in.
I think the market's pretty good right now in Madison to sell.
All those people from away are coming in. So I don't know. Well, whatever.
Good
Well,
point.
I'm sorry.
Was there like a question?
I don't know what that was.
I was just making a comment.
What was your goal? Were you trying to say that we should think of ways to maybe optimize people moving into town if they're not here permanently, or what were you thinking?
No, I guess I was regretting what might be people leaving town because they can't afford it
Oh.
and selling out to all those New Yorkers coming in.
Yeah.
Hey, don't trash the New Yorkers.
Oops.
I mean, my 2 cents is too early to tell, but I saw a lot of houses that were just sitting on the market for years, and then they started selling. So it's not like there weren't, I'm sure there's some of what you're describing, people leaving, but my sense was it was much more that stale inventory, and then all of a sudden, overnight, it all started moving.
Yeah, the market picked up a lot. It seemed to turn from hot to warm right now, but I think Fillmore just wanted to talk, that's all.
As usual.
So,
But John, you've been quiet. Somebody had to pick up the slack.
I know, Fillmore, I know you always have my back, pal. That's why we've been friends for a long time.
This might be, do we charge people that aren't full-time residents a higher tax rate? There you go. Full-time residents get the local fee. We could talk about doing something that way. They do it in other states,
Yeah,
other towns.
I don't know if all those Florida residents would be very happy with you, Ken. So you
Oh,
better
I hear you.
Yeah.
Listen,
Some of his neighbors do.
All right, well, we'll table that discussion. Any other comments?
I thought the financials looked pretty good there. I thought the tax collection, everything else looked pretty good so far. So we just got to keep an eye on it.
Yeah,
That's all I like to comment.
good. All right, liaison reports. Any liaison reports?
Yeah, in spite of somebody saying I want to talk a lot, I have two or three things to bring up. The solar photovoltaic project over at the school system. The committee met here a couple of weeks ago and recommended an outfit called Green Skies to put up to build some sheds over the parking lot and put up some photovoltaic cells. And I think that's been sent to the Board of Selectmen for their approval. It is not a huge project. I was a little surprised to see the size of it. I sort of thought when I first heard about it, they were going to be covering that whole parking lot, but it's really a pretty small segment. But it will be generating savings in electricity and should be a good thing. The library met on Monday. I think that's all been covered already. I think they're on track. They still have some money to raise for their capital project, but they're on track to come up with their portion of the operating expense. And then the pension committee met this morning, and the three different pension committees as of last night, close of business, totaled about $41 million in the reserve. So we've rebounded pretty well from some of the earlier downturns. The audit has not been finalized yet, so we don't know exactly where we stand. Maybe next month we'll know. There's going to be further discussion on lowering the expected target rate of what we anticipate in doing the actuarial projection. So we'll be hearing more about that in the coming months. That's all I have.
Great, thanks, Fillmore. Any other liaison reports? First Select Woman, you're up.
Okay, you know what? I'm going to shut my door because my dog's barking. Of course, right when I have to talk. So I just wanted to quickly update you on a couple things. One is on the reimbursement process that we've been going through FEMA. We submitted through June 30th approximately $200,000 of expenses that we incurred due to COVID, and with the hope, this is to FEMA, that we would get, a significant proportion of those reimbursed. FEMA actually was quite quick in reviewing all those very detailed submissions, but we started to find that they were not accepting and asking for additional review. I think Stacy's office went through like 3 different rounds of questioning for those amounts of money. And we're delaying kind of accepting the requests. And we also faced another deadline that the state had put out. The state got over $40 million in funding for cities and towns through the CARES Act. And those applications for funding out of the state through OPM needed to be submitted by the end of October, I think it was. So many towns similar to us were in this quandary. Do we go for FEMA or do we go to the state? And the state recommended submitting it to the state. So we withdrew the ones that were kind of had question marks and pending status with FEMA. And we withdrew about $130,000 of expenses and turned around and submitted to the state. And then we learned today that so that left about 70,000 with FEMA. And we learned today we got 60 approved, right? So we are getting 60 back from FEMA. In the meantime, what I've learned is that we're most likely to get the full remainder of the amount, $130,000 back from the state. The good news is the state has only received like $16 million in requests out of the $40 million that they have because I guess it was a very laborious process. So I think once again, accolades to our finance department and to our emergency management director for doing a really good job in submitting this stuff. So Stacy, I spoke to actually the undersecretary of OPM today and also on the governor's call, this was talked about. It hasn't been rolled out officially. So you're getting an unofficial discussion that I had that will most likely all towns will be getting that submission that they had made. But the question comes up about anything after June 30th. And that was my bigger concern about we still have expenses incurred and more things that could be coming with the second wave. And the state is probably going to take the rest of the money left, which is about $30,000 or $30 million, and do block grants to communities. And so we're not sure what we would get. But at least we would have a chunk of money given to us to use for COVID related expenses. So that's, at least we know there's some assurance to getting other funds back. And from what I've heard is we should still try to do FEMA. So there's a lot going on with FEMA, and some of it could be politically motivated. Some of it could just be FEMA. But we're hopeful that there might be some additional greasing of the wheels, so to speak, there also at FEMA, so that some of the other things that we submit could happen. And then on top of that, we're hoping to get a block grant from the state to cover a lot of other expenses that we might be incurring or had occurred since June 30th. So I think it's all good news. I mean, until it's in the bank, obviously we can't count on anything. But I think it was good news to know that I think we can, that we will be getting some funding back, and hopefully by the end of this year. That's the goal with the CARES money, that it will be distributed by the end of this year. So that was good news. I don't want to say bad news, but I just want to prepare you that eventually I'm going to be coming to the board with a special appropriation for beach and recreation. And there's kind of two things behind that. One is the garbage contract, the refuge pickup contract with Schweitzer. The board approved in, I think it was late June, was over budget significantly. And we only had one bidder on the contract. So we were kind of not hijacked, but more, we had to accept the contract basically for this year for refuse picked up. And this was in the middle of the summer. They handle our downtown service. And I know that there's been a lot of complaints and discussion about downtown trash pickup. One of the cost drivers to the increased pricing on the contract was downtown trash. So that is an out of budget item that I think, Stacy, is the amount, what, $20,000? Or 30?
I think it's about 16.
Oh, is it 16? What did I think it was 20? Okay, $16,000. So that's an area, it's completely out of Scott's budget. He does not have room to absorb that, and we really had no choice. So I think we just need to get that resolved and cleaned up at one point. The second thing is we're going to have to address the additional staffing for the 2 days that we did add back at the beginning of the season for this budget year. For needing full staffing at all beaches 7 days a week. And that was part of the COVID response to increasing attendance at all our beaches. And I briefed your board about this, I think back in June, that we were going to add back that staffing. We were hoping to try to do that through line item transfers, and we will still try to do some of that. But we've had some overtime issues also in Beach and Rec. And one of the things I implemented last week was a moratorium on all overtime. So no department in town hall can have any more overtime unless it gets personally approved by me. So I'm trying to get a cap on that, review why we've had overtime issues, But I just wanted to flag for you. I don't know when we'll bring it back to your board, but that might be something coming up that we have to deal with.
Peggy, I had a quick question. You kind of referenced it. In terms of any kind of spending freezes right now, have you done anything with the town just to kind of freeze everything up till we know the total reimbursements, until we have a better handle on expenses? Have you done any of that?
No, I mean, I haven't done any spending freezes. Obviously, departments need to continue to offer their services. Overtime, in my view, unless it is this is where I'm learning about how overtime is handled in departments, and it becomes a routine expense, which I think, and sometimes we need to reflect on what our policies are and how we staff things. So that's why I think we need to review our overtime policies and how we use staffing to incur overtime, because sometimes it's like, well, if we're always having overtime, 12 months a year, every weekend, it's not really overtime now, isn't it? It's kind of like regular staffing. So we need to kind of address that. But in terms of other expenditures, we have talked about, it's really the COVID stuff that is more out of budget expenses. And so we're trying to be much more mindful, knowing the fact that it's a little dicier about getting reimbursed for some of this stuff from FEMA and from the state. But
Right.
I have not put in any other spending moratoriums, no,
Have you
because
thought about that? Because
I haven't seen a need for that. That there's an issue, to be honest, in terms of we're obviously making all our revenue targets in terms of collections. Everybody's staying within budget except for these specific issues. If I do see a problem, I try to address it, and that's why I jumped in with the overtime.
Right. I just would, I just know, upcoming budget, we started, in my opinion, we're 67,000 in the hole. From when I was on the Board of Ed, we would freeze at this point. So we knew we could cross the finish line and move
Right.
money around if we needed to. So I guess,
But that's where I'm trying to identify what specific departments where there's issues. So Stacy and I can sit down and go through that more, but I feel like where we are now, I'm comfortable with it. We also just went through the election. And so the town clerk's office, obviously, and the registrars went through a process of needing a lot of money too. We've got some grant applications. So all that has to be reviewed before we know kind of where we are in some of those departments. The other thing I wanted
just
to
keep in
mention,
mind, we're behind already. So
Yeah.
I think it would be wise to start to look at areas that you could start, freezing a little bit till we cross the finish line.
will do.
It's going to be a tough budget year.
Yeah.
And just need to try to get ahead of it as much as we possibly can.
Because we need to try to help out next year, because again, we're behind. So when you say I don't see a need, there is a need, because we know next year we're going to need help. So I think anything
Well,
that.
but as I've said, some of the areas that there's issues I'm addressing, and one of them is beach and rec, which is a problem. I think the town clerk's office is another area. We have to do a post-election analysis of like where they are in their budgets and spending. So, and I think part of the problem has been overtime. But yeah, your point's taken. So
Thank
the other thing I wanted to mention was the ambulance study RFPs came back. And we got 2 bids, and I need a member of the Board of Finance to be part of the RFP review committee. The pricing was in the, $40,000 range with the 2 bids. And so we're looking to modify and reduce that possibly. And also I just need somebody to participate in that from your board. Which I think the suggestion had been if Justin wanted to participate again, because I know he was very involved in the facilities review committee. So this would be, once again, people from different boards sitting on the RFP review committee. So that is my update.
Thank you. Any other questions for Peggy? Thoughts? Justin, you just got volunteered for another committee. Congratulations.
So you do a good job, and this
Yeah,
is what
that's
happens, right?
That is the curse. That's the curse. So, good. Any other questions? No? Thank you, Peggy.
Yep.
Citizens' comments. Anyone, Lauren?
Yes, Gus Horvath has his hand raised, so I will allow him to speak.
Hello, how are you doing?
Hi, Gus.
Couple of comments. Tonight you did a tremendous number of special appropriations, kind of unusual. And Stacy brought up the issue initially about where you were going to take it from, whether it would be from contingency or from the fund balance. And Phil mentioned that type of thing too. And of the 44 town meetings we've had in the last 10 years, over 30 of them were about special appropriations, and not one of them did we have a quorum. And why we have so many going to the town meeting is, compared to other towns, we have a very, very low threshold of referring special appropriation to town meetings. It's $50,000. And the town of Guilford went through this for a number of years. And the last time they updated their charter, they adopted a plan that is done by a number of other communities in the state of Connecticut, in that they set an overall percentage of the budget and for consideration for the entire fiscal year. They didn't do it on a per basis, per special appropriation basis. And we have a charter review coming up, I think. And I would suggest that maybe the Board of Finance might want to think about a couple of issues that they might want to pass on to the Charter Review Committee as part of their Board of Finance's participation in this. At one time, the Board of Finance had not a policy, but it was informal. We used to carry 1% of the operating budget in the contingency fund. And that was done because the public voted on that in the budget. So that money was already appropriated. So you didn't have to go through the special town meetings in order to use that money. The Board of Finance was able to move money on a line item transfer from the contingency fund to whatever was being requested by a department. If the money was going to come out of the fund balance, that had to go to a town meeting because it had not been voted by the voters. So these are the type of thing that when the Charter Review Committee gets off the ground, you might want to take a look at it. And to see how Guilford handles it, you might want to take a look at their charter online and see how they deal with their special appropriation. And a number of other towns have done that. I've looked very closely at the Simsbury charter because it's relatively new. And it also went from a town meeting to a town manager. And they changed their method of doing it. And it's almost a carbon copy of what Guilford has. I don't know whether they copied it from the Guilford or not. So number one, the issue is we've had all these town meetings that nobody goes to. The bulk of them, 3/4 of them, have been special appropriations that you guys have handled tonight. And other communities have resolved the issue of not having so many town meetings by how they channel their special appropriations in a town charter. Amen.
Thanks, Gus. And you're right, that is something the Charter Review Committee can look at. Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
That was it.
Sam's
real
got his
quick,
hand raised.
I
Go
just
ahead,
wanted to,
Sam.
I just wanted to thank you guys for your support in enhancing the public safety for the town. It's truly appreciated.
Sam, you've outdone yourself during these difficult times, and anything we can do to make it easier.
Yeah, anytime. Good job.
You've done an excellent job. Thank you. Good. Any other thoughts, questions, comments?
Move we adjourn.
A motion to adjourn.
Phil Moore. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're out. Goodbye.